Hi. So a while back I made a YouTube cover video of Cool, the song Cool by Dua Lipa, and it was just a cover of absolutely every part and every aspect and every instrument of the song. It was just a really fun experiment trying to get it to sound exactly as close to the original track as I possibly could, and I feel like I got pretty close. And the hardest part of it was definitely getting the synth sound, that lead main synth sound, which you just saw me playing in the intro. And obviously I'm using a Prophet 6. I don't even know what synths they were using on the original track to get the sound they got. But so basically I just decided I'm going to use the Prophet 6 to get as close as I can. And what you heard just now and what's in the original video I made is not just one sound, it's actually about 5 different sounds all on the Prophet 6, just recorded separately and stacked together at different volumes. But what I'm going to do today is show you the main patch, which sounds like this. So obviously there are other patches that are playing the exact same notes, just on slightly different sounds stacked together, but the main one that you're hearing is definitely this one. It's the loudest in the mix out of all of them, and it's the one that has the most character. The others are kind of just adding a bit of a few other things, and later I'll play you just audio of the other sounds. It would just be such a long video if I were to play you all of the sounds. And also, because this is a Prophet 6 and I don't know what synths they were originally using, you know, this is not a tutorial on how to get the exact sound that they have, that Dua Lipa has in her track. This is a tutorial on how to approximate the character of that sound. And so I thought it makes more sense to just give you the main synth sound, because that's most useful for synth users. If this was a production video or a production tutorial video, then maybe I'd go into all of the different sounds. But yeah, I'm not really an expert in production. Well, I'm not really an expert in synths either, but I'm just doing what I can. But so I will show you the audio of those other sounds later. But for now, I will just show you how I made this sound. And the way I do that, if you haven't seen my other videos, the way I do that is I call up this preset that I've made. So that's what it sounds like. And now I'm going to initialize this patch so that now everything is at its default sounds initialized, but all of the parameters are saved so that they're still saved into this patch. So that whenever I get to the correct parameter, that little light will come on, which shows me that that's the exact parameter that is saved for this patch. And so go through everything and eventually I'll have rebuilt that sound. So let's get started. First thing is always the oscillators. So what we've got is we've got oscillator 1 and oscillator 2 both at full volume, no sub. We do have some noise, but I'm going to bring the noise in later, and we'll discuss that later. So for now, with the 2 main oscillators, we've got them both at default pitch, so just C2 on both of them, and we've got them both on saw waves. Sorry, we've got them both on on square waves, and that sounds like this. Now, I seem to have them ever so slightly off center on their pulse width, just so slightly. I'm not even sure if that was intentional, but that's how I've got it saved. And one important thing is I've got the fine tuning is just ever so slightly up, so that it just gives a bit of that chorusing. Just here, this is what it sounds like at center pitch. And this is what it sounds like with just that slight detune, and just makes it sound a lot better. And then on top of all that, we've got a little bit of slop. And slop just slightly randomizes the pitch of all of them. Now, importantly, when I created this patch, it was before the Prophet 6 released the vintage mode for the Prophet 6. So I've currently got this machine set to vintage mode off, which means that slop only affects pitch. It doesn't affect other things like the filter envelope and other things like that. And that's important because when you got vintage mode on, this amount of slop would be affecting the pitch less than it currently is with vintage mode off. So it's not that important a factor in the sound, but just something to be aware of. So that's what you got. You got two square waves that are slightly off center pulse width wise, and the oscillator 2 is slightly sharp on pitch. So next thing is the amplifier envelope. So I've always got envelope amount at full. So we want attack at 0, which is the default, and then we've got decay up here, and then we've got basically sustain is down a little bit. So what that's going to do is it means that, so when I play the note, it immediately goes to full volume without any attack. It's immediately at full volume, and then it takes this amount of time to come down to this volume. So this would mean full volume. So what that's doing is it's just giving a slight bit of attack at the beginning, a little bit of decay, which gives it a little bit of punch. And then the next thing, I just have a little bit of attack, have a little bit of release. And so that's giving it a bit of its character, but what's really going to give it that envelope, the particular envelope profile, is the filter envelope. So what we do is we're going to bring the envelope amount up to about a bit past 3 o'clock, and we're bringing the cutoff all the way down because we need to give the filter all the headroom so that this has somewhere to go. And then we're bringing the resonance up to about halfway, a bit past halfway. And then obviously right now it's doing nothing. But so what we want is attack. We do want a little bit of attack. Actually, so this is the effect that the attack is giving us. We want just a tiny bit of that effect. And then decay, we're bringing down here, and sustain is coming quite a bit lower. And so that's obviously giving us a lot more character and a lot more of that percussiveness, because the cutoff envelope, the cutoff filter is being brought much lower through the sustain. And then currently we're not hearing any release because release is at 0. So in order to be able to hear this release, because currently the filter cutoff is just closing immediately, which means we're not hearing any of this release. So we need to open that up so that we can also hear the release. So that's, your envelopes are going to give so much of the character of any sound. They're one of the biggest factors that make a synth sound the way that it sounds and play the way that it plays. So that you've got basically the core right there. But there's more to do. So the next thing, now that we've got the filter envelope set to where we want it, we're using the Polymod. And we're using the Polymod to affect the shape through the filter envelope. We're leaving the oscillator 2, that's not doing anything for the polymod, but filter envelope, so we're using the filter envelope to affect shape 1. And what that means is it's going to modulate shape 1 according to the profile of the filter envelope. And because shape 1 is all the way to the right, it's all the way onto square, it means the only place to go is backwards. Backwards towards saw and triangle, which means that we're affecting filter envelope in the negative. If I brought it up to the positive, it would be trying to go past there and doing absolutely nothing. But so bring it back here means that every time I play a note, it's actually starting back here and jumping towards square. So every time I play a note, it's taking this tiny bit of attack. In that tiny little space of time, it's jumping way back here, and then in this amount of time, it's jumping back up towards here. But actually, because the sustain is here, that means it's not jumping all the way back to square, it's jumping probably around here, right? So that's going to affect the sound quite a bit because it's essentially changing the shape completely of oscillator 1, while oscillator 2 is still doing a square wave. So that sounds like this. Without it. With it. It's pretty subtle, but it's definitely there. So the next thing we want to do is the LFO. And first we're going to use LFO to affect pulse width. Which sounds like this. So we've got it on triangle, and we've got it at this pitch, this frequency, which you can hopefully see there, and then we're bringing it way back to be actually very subtle pulse width modulation, which is at this point mainly only affecting oscillator 2, because the sustain here has oscillator 1 probably back here somewhere. So that's without, with. Subtle again, but it's definitely there. And then the next thing, now that we've got that all set, we're just turning on some vibrato. So frequency 1 and frequency 2 oscillators, just the pitch is being modulated at the same rate and amount as the pulse width modulation, which sounds like this. It's actually quite, like if you, it's pretty, it's actually a pretty strong vibrato, but because it's such a punchy, stabby sound, you don't hear that much of the vibrato. Right, so that's definitely the majority of the sound is right there, and then there are a few more things to do. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to bring this noise in. So this is what it sounds like now. And there it's about 1 o'clock, 1:30. So that adds a lot more punch. And a lot more interest to the sound. And the noise really brings out what the resonance is doing in the movement of the filter cutoff. Having that noise really accentuates what that sounds like, because this Yeah. So I forgot, I turned that off and I forgot to turn that back on. So that's what it sounds like now. And then to tame the high frequencies of this a little bit and to make it a bit more vintage sounding, we're bringing in the tiniest amount of distortion. You hear that, right? That's what more distortion would sound like, but just having that hint of it. Without. With. So that is, in terms of synthesis, that is the whole sound. Two things I forgot to mention that are relatively important. Pan spread is on the default of 0, so it's a purely mono sound. And key mode, I always like to have, I wish this was the default of last retrig. If anyone knows how to change it to the default, let me know. In other videos I talk about why it's important, but yeah, essentially it is, and but it's not too important in this patch, but I just like to have it because it's the least limiting way to have the keyboard set. But so, this is a mono sound right now, and then we just want one effect which is going to give it just that bit more interest and depth, and it's also going to make it stereo, and that is, of course, chorus, because chorus is everything. Especially in this kind of 80s nostalgic music, chorus is absolutely everything. So we've got chorus 2 on. We've got it on, there it is at 58. Mix at 58. Speed at 16, depth at 22. Without, very noticeable. And that is essentially the sound. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to play you the other, I think it's 4 other sounds. I'm going to play you the other patches, the other synth sounds that are playing the exact same notes concurrently mixed in with this sound. And I'm going to play you everything at its relative volume. So I'm not going to change the, so I've got them all set at different volumes to make one sound that works, and so that's how I've mixed it, and I'm going to leave them at those volumes when I solo them so that you'll be able to hear which one is supposed to be the loudest, which, like, how loud these things are supposed to be in relation to each other. But another reason that I'm not really going to go into depth about how these, about all the different patches that I use for this sound is because I was not very scientific about it. What happened was I made so many patches and I layered them all together, and I just had so many things going on because I was just trying and trial and error and trying to figure out what worked. And the 5 that I have now are just the 5 that are left. These are just the 5 that came together in a way that happened to work based on the patches I had made in trying to approximate this. And some of them may be redundant. There may be a simpler way to make this sound work, but this is just how it happened for me. So I'm not really going to go and try and replicate that all for you because, yeah, not very many of you are trying to make a note-for-note cover of this song. So it's not that useful to everyone. But this is the most playable. This is the most playable of them and the most useful if you actually ever wanted to play this song live or something. Okay, so first I'm going to play you all of these together, layered together, and that sounds like this. And this is what the main sound that I just created before your eyes sounds like. And then this is the first layered sound, and it's based on a saw wave, and it's just a bit of a softer sound. So that sound gives it a bit more body. And then this sound is an octave, which only comes in at the chorus. And I think it's based on a triangle wave, and it's a very pure sounding sound with a bit of attack. It sounds like this. And then we've got sort of a flutish kind of sound. And then we've got just some more noise, basically. So now I'll just add these layers one by one, and you'll hear what they sound like. And now I'll show you what all of that sounds like with reverb. So yeah, I hope this has been helpful and informative for you. Again, yeah, like the stuff at the end is probably the least useful, unless you really do want to go deep into replicating this whole song. But again, the way I've done it is just one way you could do it. There are probably so many possible combinations of synth sounds that could get you the sound that Dua Lipa has in her track. But yeah, this main sound I think gives you the majority of what the sound sounds like. And so if you ever wanted to play it or play it live or something, I think this is pretty good, pretty close. So, but thank you for watching. Please let me know in the comments what you think of this, and if you have any other tips on this song, or any other questions you want to ask about these patches or anything, or anything else you'd like to see a tutorial for. And if you do like these videos, please like it, and please subscribe if you want to see more. Bye.